The lights in the studio were hot, but the real heat came from the words echoing across the set. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, better known as AOC, was not here to play games. She was here to call out the MAGA Republicans, by name, by action, and by their absence. The country was on the brink of a government shutdown, and while millions of Americans worried about their paychecks, their health care, and their future, AOC was live on national television, torch in hand, ready to hold the powerful to account. She didn't waste a second. With the cameras rolling, she called out Speaker Mike Johnson and Donald Trump for abandoning their posts, for vanishing from the Capitol when the country needed leadership most. "They're twiddling their thumbs, talking to each other, refusing to work," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "I've never seen people who hate working so much in my life." The words cut through the noise, and you could feel the tension in the room. This wasn't just political theater. This was a reckoning. AOC didn't just criticize. She demanded accountability. She painted a picture of Republican leaders on vacation, playing golf at Mar-a-Lago, while Democrats stayed in Washington, ready to negotiate, ready to work. "If I were Mike Johnson, I'd be in that office every damn day until we reopen this government," she declared. "Any day you don't do that is a failure." The audience at home could sense the urgency, the frustration, the sense that something fundamental was broken in the way power was being wielded. But AOC wasn't finished. She turned the spotlight on the real cost of this political brinkmanship. She spoke about the millions of federal workers being held hostage, about the families who would miss paychecks, about the communities left in limbo because a handful of leaders refused to do their jobs. She called out the hypocrisy of those who claim to care about the American people while sabotaging the very systems that keep the country running. "They think sabotaging energy projects is owning the libs," she said, her tone incredulous. "But it's jacking up prices for everyone, including MAGA voters." The studio was silent, the cameras capturing every word, every gesture. Social media exploded as clips of AOC's takedown went viral. Supporters cheered her on, while critics scrambled to respond. But no one could deny the force of her argument, the clarity of her conviction. She wasn't just speaking for Democrats, she was speaking for anyone who believed that government should work for the people, not just for the powerful. As the segment drew to a close, AOC made it clear that this fight wasn't about party lines. It was about basic decency, about refusing to let political gamesmanship destroy the lives of ordinary Americans. She challenged her opponents to stop hiding, to stop making excuses, and to start doing the work they were elected to do. The message was unmistakable. Leadership means showing up, fighting for everyone, and never backing down from the truth. The fallout from AOC's live appearance was immediate and impossible to ignore. As the sun rose over Washington, her words were already ricocheting across social media, cable news, and kitchen tables nationwide. Clips of her calling out Republican leaders for skipping town while the government teetered on the edge of shutdown were everywhere. Supporters felt vindicated, finally seeing someone say what they'd been thinking for weeks. Critics, meanwhile, scrambled to spin the narrative, but the images of empty Republican seats in the Capitol spoke louder than any talking point. AOC's message was simple. Leadership is about showing up. She didn't just criticize from afar, she was in Washington, ready to negotiate, ready to work, while her opponents were nowhere to be found. She called out Speaker Mike Johnson by name, demanding to know why he wasn't in his office, hammering out a deal with Hakeem Jeffries to reopen the government. "Any day you don't do that is a failure," she repeated, her words echoing in the halls of Congress and in the minds of millions watching at home. But AOC didn't stop at the shutdown. She exposed the deeper hypocrisy at play, pointing out how Republican leaders were blocking the swearing-in of a duly elected representative, leaving over 700,000 Arizonans without a voice in Congress. She refused to accept the excuses about pomp and circumstance, reminding viewers that the real issue was about power, representation, and the willingness to play political games with people's lives. Her frustration was palpable, but so was her resolve. She made it clear that this wasn't just about one seat or one state. It was about the fundamental right of every American to be represented, to be heard, and to have leaders who actually do their jobs. The conversation shifted to energy and infrastructure, and AOC's fire only grew. She called out the cancellation of wind energy projects in New York, explaining how these decisions weren't just Democratic priorities. They were basic necessities for everyone. She broke down how rising energy costs were hitting Republican districts just as hard, if not harder, than Democratic ones. They are jacking up the prices on MAGA voters too, she said, her voice cutting through the partisan noise. It is killing all of us. The message was clear. The consequences of political sabotage don't stop at party lines. They hurt real people, in real communities, across the country. AOC's passion was matched by her command of the facts. She reminded viewers of the days before the EPA, when rivers caught fire and corporations poisoned rural communities with impunity. She made the case that protecting the environment, lowering housing costs, and raising the minimum wage weren't just Democratic priorities. They were American priorities. You're damn right it's a Democratic priority to keep people from getting poisoned, she declared. You're damn right it's a Democratic priority to bring down the cost of housing and mortgages and rent. Her words resonated with anyone who had ever felt the sting of rising bills or the fear of losing their home. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when AOC addressed the culture wars raging online. She spoke about how certain Republican leaders and their allies were radicalizing young men, pushing them away from healthy masculinity and into a toxic, divisive worldview. She didn't mince words, calling out the spread of white supremacist messaging and the exploitation of division for profit and power. She named names: Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg, reminding viewers that the real winners in this game were the billionaires who benefited from keeping Americans fighting among themselves. AOC's call to action was unmistakable. She urged her audience to stand in solidarity, to reject the politics of division, and to fight for a country where everyone, regardless of background, gender, or political affiliation, could thrive. She spoke of love, honor, and the shared responsibility to look out for one another, even when it meant reaching across lines of difference. Her words were a rallying cry, a reminder that the fight for justice and dignity is never just about policy, it's about people. As the segment ended, the impact was undeniable. AOC had not only torched her opponent's arguments, she had set a new standard for what it means to lead with courage, clarity, and compassion. The conversation was far from over, but one thing was certain: the country was listening, and the stakes had never been higher. The days that followed AOC's viral appearance saw the conversation shift from outrage to action. Her words had ignited something deeper than a trending hashtag. They had sparked a sense of urgency, a demand for accountability that echoed far beyond the walls of Congress. In town halls, union meetings, and family group chats, Americans were asking the same questions AOC had posed on live TV. Why aren't our leaders working for us? Why are the people with the most power so often the first to walk away from the table? AOC didn't let the momentum fade. She kept showing up, not just in the media but in the communities most affected by the shutdown and the political gamesmanship. She visited federal workers who were missing paychecks, listened to their stories, and promised to keep fighting until their voices were heard. She met with healthcare advocates, teachers, and small business owners, reminding them that their struggles were not invisible, that someone in Washington was still fighting for them. Her presence was a reminder that leadership isn't about grandstanding or scoring points. It's about standing with people when it matters most. Meanwhile, the Republican leaders she had called out tried to regain control of the narrative. They held press conferences, issued statements, and tried to shift the blame. But the images of empty seats and closed doors lingered. The public had seen the contrast. On one side, a congresswoman refusing to back down, demanding real solutions. On the other, leaders who seemed more interested in political theater than in doing the hard work of governing. The pressure mounted, and even some within their own party began to question the wisdom of their strategy. AOC's message about bipartisanship and real negotiation struck a chord. She made it clear that she was willing to work with anyone, Republican or Democrat, who was serious about helping people. She pointed to her own record, highlighting bipartisan bills she had co-sponsored to expand maternal health and support new mothers. But she drew a firm line. Talk was cheap, and promises meant nothing without action. "Walk the walk," she said, echoing the frustration of millions who were tired of empty rhetoric and broken promises. The debate over healthcare, energy, and the role of government continued to rage, but AOC's insistence on facts and compassion kept cutting through the noise. She debunked myths about healthcare for undocumented immigrants, explained the real impact of energy project cancellations, and reminded viewers that the fight for clean air, safe water, and affordable housing was not a partisan issue, it was a human one. Her ability to connect policy to real lives made her arguments impossible to ignore, even for those who disagreed with her politics. As the government shutdown dragged on, AOC's resolve only grew stronger. She refused to accept the idea that millions of Americans should go without paychecks, healthcare, or basic services because of political brinkmanship. She called out the pinky promises and half measures, demanding real, written commitments before any deal could be trusted. Her insistence on accountability became a rallying cry for those who had lost faith in the system, a reminder that democracy only works when leaders are held to their word. In the end, AOC's live TV appearance became more than just a viral moment. It became a turning point. She had shown what it looks like to lead with integrity, to speak truth to power, and to refuse to back down in the face of adversity. Her words inspired a new wave of activism, as people across the country demanded more from their leaders and from themselves. The fight was far from over, but thanks to AOC's courage and conviction, the path forward was a little clearer, and the hope for real change a little brighter.